Lee, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I wasn't going to bring this up, but today we had to close the store 2 hours early because we didn't have somebody called out sick
Wow,
and
I
we
didn't
had
know
nobody
that.
to fill it. And I was doing this podcast, so I couldn't run in to help. So it's a legitimately real thing
Yeah.
where that occasionally does happen. And it's truly a thing that can happen to businesses even outside of coffee, where it's you can implode from not necessarily
Yeah.
a lack of customers, but from too many customers and not enough systems or personnel or whatever your particular business is.
Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 3 of our 5-part series with Nick Kassouf. Nick, we are talking about the challenges of staffing in the coffee industry today. And in today's episode, we want to talk about, in general, the most challenging aspects of running a cafe. Before we deep dive into that, I want to kind of present the off ramp and how the staffing issue really does lead into a deeper problem with regards to cafes. I am hearing more and more people in the industry say it's not that we can't get enough customers. We've got plenty of customers. Business is doing really, really well, and we're scared we're going to end up going out of business because we don't have enough staff to help us run the business. And if that continues, we're going to go out of business. We're not going to be able to service our customers. What are your thoughts on this?
Lee, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I wasn't going to bring this up, but today we had to close the store 2 hours early because we didn't have somebody called out sick
Wow,
and
I
we
didn't
had
know
nobody
that.
to fill it. And I was doing this podcast, so I couldn't run in to help. So it's a legitimately real thing
Yeah.
where that occasionally does happen. And it's truly a thing that can happen to businesses even outside of coffee, where it's you can implode from not necessarily
Yeah.
a lack of customers, but from too many customers and not enough systems or personnel or whatever your particular business is.
Folks, our first on-demand workshop, How to Become a Coffee Consultant, is now available for you to learn at your own pace for just €50, and it comes with a certificate upon completion. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for more details. Support this podcast by supporting our sponsors.
To service those customers, you can basically topple your business if it's running at an unsustainable pace. And that human labor capital side of things is really, I think, putting a lot of strain on business owners across multiple industries. And you see people closing not because of necessarily a lack of financial revenue coming in, but a lack of people to sustain the business.
And it used to be in the day that employees wouldn't work for somebody because they were a shitty employer. That whole landscape has changed now. There are so many more reasons that employees in our industry are not coming to our industry. It used to be that businesses went out of business because they were running a shitty business. They didn't know how to, acquire new customers. They didn't have good marketing plans. They didn't have good pricing structures. They screwed over their suppliers. They were the legitimate reasons that businesses were going out of business 10 years ago. Now there's so many different reasons that businesses could go out of reason. It makes your head want to spin.
Yep.
What are your concerns around something like that as a business owner?
My biggest concern is scalability. So we've talked
Mm.
kind of in the past, maybe off air, but I do plan to continue growing the business and want
Uh-huh.
to open a few more locations. But I truly do have a concern that scaling without the proper personnel is a dangerous and very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's a legitimately big challenge that we face right now. And it's weird too because we actually do get quite a few applications, and we still have a good influx of people who want to work at our company. But it's just a lot of people don't make it through the vetting process
Yeah.
because, and it's not that it's a crazy high bar, but it's just truly when you talk with some people, you have a realization that this person will not last in a high volume cafe
Yeah.
because they may indicate to you in their interview that they don't handle stress well, or some sort of, thing they say that will make you have that realization, like this person would not last in a high volume stressful cafe. For example, one girl I interviewed not long ago said that she got very stressed out if like her room was like out of place or a little bit, messy or disorganized. And I was thinking, man, like the bar, the espresso bar on like a Saturday when you have, 50 tickets lined up and things spilled and things everywhere, like that she would go crazy. Like obviously that's not the right fit. So it's, yeah, it's challenging to, one, yeah, there are less people who, want to work maybe in the industry. And then two, it's at a certain point in your business lifespan, you need to be more particular about the type of people you hire. So that further limits the pool of, people you have access to.
And do you find that, like, we put all this effort, you and I have had many conversations about culture within a cafe and creating an environment that feels not only safe, but also represents the brand so that the customers know exactly what it's about, the staff know exactly what it's about. Where's the line where you have to start compromising that and making decisions about having to let some slippage happen and perhaps onboard people that may not be the right fit? Or do you draw a hard line? Go on.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And no, I do not draw a hard line, because it is one of those things where you're at this point where you have your staple people, say, who've been with you for a few years, and they are the model employee of what you want for your company's culture. However, they're severely understaffed, they're struggling, and you genuinely, I truly, really love my employees, and especially the ones who've been with me a long time, and, who I know like truly care about our company as a whole.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing them like dying from being like overworked, understaffed. And then you have this temptation here where this person applies and maybe they don't check every box of like who you would like in like the perfect ideal scenario, but you're like, it's a person, it's a body, and like it can be some relief to your, your struggling employees. And so in that state, you're like, okay, well, we'll onboard them, we'll bring them on. And then you're at this point where you're like, down the line, did you make the right decision?
Right.
Like maybe that wrong person has a more negative effect on your, your crew than just letting it struggle through the short staffedness. It's a hard line to know. Yeah, it's a flux point of what do you do? It's a constant struggle that we deal with.
And it's expensive to onboard people, right? It's the training and trying to get them into a culture. How do you navigate that? Like, how do you make these decisions?
So I have somebody that does our training now. She's like one of our kind of former managers. She's still kind of a manager, and I've been having her do a lot of the interviewing and the onboarding. And I still meet all the new people before I say yes or no. I don't necessarily sit through the whole interview with them, but I will. You can get a good idea of people relatively quickly. And I trust her opinion on it. And when our just kind of feel for those people align, then we bring them on. And we have a pretty good, I would say, vetting process. I don't know if we were going to talk about that later, but I have made some tweaks to that, and it's been helpful in kind of vetting in who we bring in. But having a higher bar means you have less people to work with, and so we continue to struggle with short staffness. But it's just one of those things. It's just the nature of the business.
Do you see, and we are going to talk about this in the next episode at length, but this is a time to bring it up because I know everybody who's out there listening is like, what about technology and what about automation? And yes, like Nick, you and I have had conversations about that offline as well over the last couple of years. But is there going to get a point where you're going to have to start the integration of automation into your cafe on a more serious level?
Absolutely. And we have already begun doing that in several different facets of the business, from the espresso bar to the ordering process. I don't know if you want me to kind of delve into it now or later.
We can touch on it a little now.
So for example, one thing that we dealt with during COVID and the ensuing period of time since then is a huge influx in the desire for like phone calling in orders, or like, like mobile
Wow.
orders essentially. About a year ago, maybe a year and a half now, I lost track of time since COVID, but basically we were getting so many phone orders, just constantly inundated with the phone ringing, that we were constantly losing an employee to have to go answer the phone,
Wow.
take an order. And we literally needed a whole employee just to like take phone orders, because for whatever reason people didn't want to like come in for long. Maybe they were like scared of COVID or whatever it was. So they got to the point where we had to like cut phone orders off on the weekend. And then that ended up just causing like a lot of upset customers and,
Mm.
all these little issues. So we integrated like a mobile app. We created like an app for our store where people could order ahead and, pay ahead. And that's become like massively popular, to where like
Wow.
30% of our daily orders now are just through our mobile app. And we like, it'll just show up on our POS, print us a ticket, the baristas prepare it, and we set it in our mobile area. And a lot of our regulars love it because they get to skip the line.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, it's automation that has helped us, because now it's one less person that we have to ring up in the line and waste like a minute of,
Mm-hmm.
human time, like ringing that order. Which, I mean, it sounds awful because it sucks. A lot of those people are people we actually want to talk to. They're our regulars who
Mm.
we love. But when you have a line out the door, you know, subtracting 5 people out of that line because they use the mobile app is actually helpful to us in our workflow. So that's, one example of how we've already integrated automation or, technology into increasing efficiency.
What are I mean, that seems like something that is a COVID era kind of, that's something that pushed that new development for innovation in your business because of COVID. That's really,
Yeah. And I would have been against that in the past, because I've always
really
thought about building my business on hospitality and
right.
person to person interaction. And so the idea of a mobile app before was like completely unacceptable to me. But
You have
times
to
change
adapt.
and you have to pivot. It's just the reality of how things are. It's just one of those realities.
What are some of the other challenges that you have had to pivot from or pivot towards post COVID?
Say it
And
again. Sorry.
are there any supply, for example, the supply chain? Like we know that
Yeah.
that got completely fucked up
Yeah.
during COVID. Were there has anything changed with regards to the way that you engage in the supply chain post
Yeah.
COVID?
I mean, the supply chain is an obvious one. I mean, it's somewhat stabilized in most areas, but I mean, during COVID and even till now, like you have extreme inconsistency of products being in stock, things that your vendor should normally have that you order in order to supply your cafe with, say, like a particular syrup or some sort of product that you use in your drinks may not be in stock, 30% of the time because of whatever supply chain issue
Right.
that continues to go on. And that leads the burden on the cafe or the brand to be dealing with upset customers because that's their favorite drink. They come in, it's out of stock.
Mm.
It's just one of those things that's still to a degree ongoing, and it just increases that burden we were talking about with cafe owners or the management in order to navigate a constantly shifting inventory of supply from vendors and just like,
Mm.
even green coffee. We
Oh
dealt with
yeah.
green coffee shortages last year, the year before. There's always, for us, we have a kitchen, so we deal with avocado shortages, and people can't get their avocado toast. So there's all these different co-founding factors of things that you need to keep in stock and, ready to serve to your customers. And when they're not there, you can lose customers. You get employees taking a beating from customers yelling at them because they're,
Yeah.
most of our customers are great. They won't actually yell, but you're still dealing with an upset customer, and
Eye
it puts a
rolling
toll
and
on
all that kind of
everybody.
thing.
Exactly.
So when we look at like the challenging things of running a cafe, we've talked about staffing, we've talked about supply chain and the need for technology. One thing we haven't talked about is the cost of living crisis. Are you noticing that as your costs go up and as your challenges get steeper, if you increase your prices, how are your customers relating to that?
I think that question is perhaps difficult for me to answer because it may be area dependent, and
Okay.
where our cafes are located, they're in, I would say, a
Affluent
more,
areas.
like a middle to, upper class area where people may not be quite as price sensitive. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, some of our demographic is, we have a lot of college students and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But to a degree, I've found not too much pushback from having to raise prices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've adjusted prices with inflation steadily over the last couple of years. It's just one of those unfortunate things. Our costs doubled on many things.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to raise prices or you go out of business. Just one of those things. But I haven't had too much pushback, but that's anecdotal again. I don't know, like, at a broader spectrum how that's affecting people. I think there's no doubt that just inflation in general will be burdensome on everybody. I mean, now $7 a gallon for gas is undoubtedly going to have an effect on our business and what people can afford. And housing, as you alluded to, is insane where we are. It's just extremely expensive. For like a 1-bedroom apartment, you could be paying $2,500, just depending where you are. It's just, yeah. So, and wages have not risen in proportion to inflation over the last couple decades. So people are extremely underpaid relative to the cost of living, at least in California.
Especially in California. Like the minimum wage is still 15.
It's $15.50 now. There was recently a labor union kind of formed for fast food workers, where now minimum wage for them is like $20 or $21 an hour for fast food workers.
Wow.
Yeah, and that applies specifically to stores that have like over 60 stores or some number. I might be butchering the exact numbers, but it's tailored towards bigger companies. But of course, that's going to have industry-wide ramifications because now smaller shops, have to compete. Like, why work at a cafe and get paid 16 when you could work at McDonald's and get 21?
Yeah.
But what you're going to see is you're not going to be able to get a job at McDonald's because they've already begun replacing people with screens where you just order on the screen and they have one cook in the back that, flips the burgers. So it's the attempt to kind of mitigate the lower wages is just further driving the advent of automation, and you're going to just further, throw our workplace, the economy,
it's going to
an automated
create chaos.
State. Yeah.
This is the perfect point for us to head into the next episode, because in the next episode, folks, we're going to talk about the relationship between automation and human labor and what role that's going to play. Well, what role it's playing now in the minds of business owners, because I don't know a single business owner that's not thinking about it, given all the stresses that they're under. And we're in a deep phase of transition into how much, do you have 50% of the work that's done in your cafe being done by automation and technology, or do you have more or less than that? So join us for the next episode where we explore this. Peace, love, and peanut butter, everybody. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in, friends. There are 2 ways you can support this podcast. Firstly, become a paid member of our YouTube channel. Secondly, you can join our Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video before you leave, and check the show notes for more information. Now, this is what you should check out next.